Good evening, members of the council. Can we ask Councillor David Stanley to say the Lord's Prayer? If you be so kind. Thank you.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen.
I'm sorry, I should have said there, for those that can stand, so those that are struggling to stand, please be seated. And can you now remain standing, those that can stand, for the national anthem?
God save our gracious King, long live our noble King. God save the King. Send him victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the King. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ocean. Please be seated. Have we any apologies for absence?
Councillor Sahota and Councillor Andrew Tromans.
Okay, thank you. Any prior declarations of interest made under the Members' Code of Conduct have been published online. I now invite members to declare any additional interests. No? Okay, thank you for that. Oh, right, sorry. Councillor Bate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, just to declare my non-pecuniary interest as Chair of the West Midlands Fire and Rescue Authority, which is a precepting authority for the West Midlands.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. I move that the minutes on the 1st of December 2025 and the extraordinary minutes on the 29th of January be confirmed as correct records and signed. Does the Council agree? Thank you. Right, you all have a leaflet in front of you from Councillor Little and Councillor Ridney. Thank you for that. It's a meeting at the Cable Plaza, yeah? Yeah, okay with that, Councillor Little, you don't say anything on that? Or self-explanatory? Yeah, okay, thank you for that. And also it's regarding it's regarding foster carers. Can anybody find anybody who's interested in being a foster carer in the borough? That would be fantastic. Thank you for that, Councillor Little and Councillor Ridney. I'm sure that members will have been saddened to hear the death of Honorary Freeman Joe Bullock at the age of 101 last December. So those who are able to stand, please stand for a minute's silence. Joe served in the Royal Navy from 1942 to 1946 and was later posted to Singapore. Joe was a D-Day veteran from Stourbridge, and it was a privilege to present him with the Freedom of the Borough last year, and I thank all of those who made that possible. Joe was also president of Stourbridge branch of the Royal Naval Association. Our thoughts and condolences are with Joe's family at this sad time. Can the council please observe a minute's silence, which we have? Thank you for that. As you may be aware, this year is Lent, and Ramadan fell at the same time. Members of both faiths are fasting together during this period. Before the council meeting next Monday, some members are organising a breaking of their fast in Committee Room 2. An invitation is extended to all councillors and staff who may wish to join the breaking of the fast and the light refreshments. Details will be circulated. Before we start the next agenda item, hopefully all members will have seen the email I circulated last week about respectful conduct and procedures in council meetings. I'm sure that we can all agree that this is in everyone's interest to ensure the meetings run smoothly and professionally as possible. Under Council Procedure Rule 14.4, the speech by the Cabinet member proposing the budget must not exceed 15 minutes. The response by the main opposition group spokesman will not exceed 15 minutes. I will then allow an additional 5 minutes for the main opposition group spokesman to purpose an amendment. All of the speeches will be subject to a usual 5 minutes limit.
Councillor Ollie. Oh, Councillor Aston.
Councillor Aston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I may come to regret this, but I move for the suspension of Standing Order 14.4 from the Council Procedure Rules for this meeting to allow the Cabinet Member for Finance, the Shadow Cabinet Member for Finance and Opposition Group Finance spokespersons to speak for as long as they wish on the budget. Thank you.
Is there a seconder? Okay. We will now put that to the vote.
That is lost.
Okay, that is lost. Right. Can we have some quiet, please, so we can carry on? Thank you. Draft Budget 2026-27, Medium-Term Financial Strategy and Council Tax Setting for 2026-27. I call on Councillor Steve Clark.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And firstly, I would like to thank the Interim 151 officer and her team for the preparation of this year's budget. And just by way of housekeeping, we have now received the final precept information from the Fire and Rescue Service. There are 2 small rounding adjustments of 1 penny for 2 of the council tax bands, and the precept information incorporated in today's decisions will be updated accordingly. So tonight I present the final budget for 2026-27 and the medium-term financial plan through to 2030-31. This budget has clear purpose: to secure Dudley's financial future, to protect essential services, and to invest in our borough. We all know the financial challenges of recent years, and the path we were on was unsustainable, relying on reserves to fill gaps year after year until those reserves reached dangerously low levels. And last year, we made the tough but necessary decision to break with the past. We set a balanced budget built on savings, not reserves, and we committed to rebuilding our financial resilience. And that decision is now paying off. Despite significant pressures in children's social care, we have delivered key outcomes, begun our improvement journey, and stayed within our financial envelope. We have actually delivered 90% of the savings target that we set, which is a tremendous achievement. Now, members will also know that this year we strengthened our monitoring, reporting, and oversight. The impact already clear. Our external auditors, Grant Thornton, have recognised the progress made and have now closed the statutory recommendations issued in February 2024. This is a major milestone. It reflects the hard work of officers and members across the council. But the auditors have also reminded us that the financial risks remain and that we must stay the course. The 2026-27 budget continues that disciplined approach for the year ahead. And we have a balanced budget achieved without any service cuts. We have £3.5 million of new savings, all efficiency-based, as we continue to improve how we work. We are rebuilding and strengthening reserves, adding £5 million to the general reserve and £1 million to the new volatility reserve. And we're investing more than £20 million to meet rising demand, support transformation, and drive improvement across our services. And at the same time, we are strengthening our long-term financial position. Our general reserves are projected to rise to £61.3 million by 2030-31. We are also establishing two vital new reserves: a financial volatility reserve with an initial £1 million contribution in 26-27, and a transformation reserve of over £10.5 million, giving the council the financial capacity to transform and prepare for the challenges ahead. The contingency fund established in 2025-26, designed to manage risks, particularly around increased demand of care services, is also being maintained. This is a reasonable approach, especially as our reserves remain below the average for similar councils, and we simply cannot afford to erode them. For this reason, I cannot support amendments that would reduce our reserves or contingency and expose the council and our residents to unnecessary risk. Turning to financial sustainability, we have balanced the budget for 2026-27, but challenges remain. Funding gaps appear from 2027-28, rising to £11.7 million by 2030-31. We will meet these challenges as we have met others through discipline, transformation, and efficiency. The creation of the Transformation Reserve ensures that we have the right financial foundations to succeed. We now have greater certainty over the future funding with a 3-year settlement. But it must be said, Dudley has not fared well and as well as many other councils. Government assumptions place greater reliance on council tax. And our budget therefore includes an increase of 4.99%, with 2% ring-fenced for adult social care as required. We will continue to lobby for fairer funding and for a settlement that reduces the need to raise taxes locally. In developing this budget, we have encouraged discussion and challenge through our scrutiny committees, which have engaged with staff, the voluntary sector, businesses and unions. This budget protects the services residents rely on and invests in the things that matter locally. Our leisure centres and civic halls remain open and operating, with further investment to increase access for those who most need it. Continued investment in civic events that are so important to our communities, with our work supporting veterans receiving national recognition. Cleaner streets and improved green care arrangements. Safer areas around schools. Support for local businesses, including 2 hours free parking. Increased rates for foster carers and investment in children's homes. These are the assets and services that support well-being, pride and prosperity. Alongside this, our capital programme will deliver over £90 million worth of investments during the borough in 2026-27 and more than £297 million over the next 5 years. With a net budget of £393 million, Dudley is not retreating. We are playing an active, purposeful role in the life of our communities, and we have a budget that supports our ambitions. I commend this budget to the Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, formally seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bradley. Can I just say that the our system is down anyway. I don't know how we'll get on for voting. We're fine. Okay, yeah. The system is down. It has been a bit dodgy all day, I've been told, so you'll have to bear with us on that one.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just come in. The system is working, the voting system's working. We've just got the names of those who are queuing to speak, but I can see them over my shoulder by Steve's desk.
Okay.
So we're fine.
That's the
Thank you.
discussion you just had then. Okay, thank you. I now call on Councillor Ali to speak on the motion on behalf of the Labour Group.
You need to say that.
Councillor Ali, will you be moving an amendment at the conclusion of his speech? He will have 5 minutes to present that amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight is not a routine meeting. It is a moment when we decide how the Conservative administration intends to deliver services that shape daily life in every street of our borough. How refuse collections will be maintained or not. How our roads will be kept safe or not. How vulnerable residents will receive support or not. How government funding will be used in a way that genuinely works for Dudley or not. We in this chamber, Mr. Mayor, are the bridge between national policy and local reality. Government sets the direction, but it is here that those decisions are made real for the people we represent. The budget is not just about numbers, it is about fairness, lived experience, and the services families, workers, and pensioners and young people rely on. As a responsible opposition, it is our duty to challenge assumptions, test proposals, and ensure decisions are evidence-based and in the interests of all the residents. Every pound must work as hard as possible for Dudley. Let us be clear, Mr. Mayor, how we have arrived here. Over the past year, residents have faced £61 million of services ripped out out of the local services by this Conservative administration to avoid bankruptcy. Now, they will probably shake their heads, but they cannot say we didn't warn them. They refused to listen until the situation became unmanageable. The mismanagement under Councillor Harley and Clark, compounded by 14 years of ideological cuts from the last Conservative government, left local government broken. Councils like Dudley lost around £120 million. That was not an accident, it was a political choice. The Labour government has begun repairing those foundations. After 14 years, councils have finally have multi-year settlements again. Stability instead of firefighting year on year. Funding is now linked to deprivation and the real cost of delivering services. The most deprived areas will now get 45% more per head than the least deprived, correcting the unfairness of the old Conservative system. Mr. Mayor, last week, the Minister for Local Government confirmed what we have argued for a long time. Councils like ours were left in a challenging financial position because of the legacy of the previous system under the Conservatives. Dudley's core spending power will rise to 79.8 million by 2028-29, a 27.6% increase since 24-25. Thanks to our MPs, the £11.7 million recovery grant has boosted our spending power by 15.9% from 24-25 to 26-27. And there is a massive reserve forecast in the budget, and what good would that be if it isn't put to any use? We also benefit, Mr. Mayor, from £5 million in the form of standalone recovery grant, over £1 million recovery grant guarantee, almost £9 million for homeless, rough sleeping and domestic abuse, £84 million in public health funding over the next 3 years, nearly £15 million crisis resilience grant, over £20 million for children, families and youth, £6.2 million for extended producer grant, £3.6 million extra for potholes last year, and further £240 million has been announced by the West Midlands Labour Mayor over the next 5 years. This reflects the case we have consistently made for a fair deal for Dudley. The government has also committed to writing off 90% of the SEND deficit, more than the Conservatives ever did, alongside reforms announced for young people with SEND to get the right support earlier and when they need it, closer to home, without parents having to fight to get the better education and results their kids deserve. Given the context, Mr. Mayor, the budget before us should reflect fairness, sustainability and commitment to those who rely on services every day. Yet the Equality Impact Assessment gives no such assurance. It is not a shield for residents, it is a shield for the Conservative administration. It shows that older people, disabled residents, carers and those already facing disadvantage will bear the greatest burden through maximum council tax rise, higher rents and increased fees and charges. There is no cumulative impact modelling in that assessment, no distributional analysis and no attempt to quantify the effect on the lowest income households. Equality should shape the budget, not be postponed until after decisions are locked in. On this basis, we do not believe the administration, the Conservative administration, has fully discharged the public sector equality duty. The digital-only consultation excluded many older and disabled residents. The EIA admits impacts may be significant, yet offers no modelling and no concrete mitigations. This is not an equality impact assessment, it's more a compliance exercise. If the administration chooses maximum council tax, higher rents and increased fees, they must accept responsibility for the consequences. The EIA identifies the risks and they proceed regardless. Turning to the housing revenue account, we see a 43% underspend, not through efficiency, but through delay. Roofs, lifts, kitchens, bathrooms, fire safety works, adaptations are all slipping. And we are told there is no negative impact. Tell that to the tenant still waiting for a new roof, or the family waiting for adaptations, or residents still waiting for fire safety works. Tenants pay more while receiving less. That is a political choice. The reduction in service charges is presented as a generosity. In reality, services were delayed, tenants were charged for work that started late, and now the reduction is spun as a gift. It reflects failure to deliver. We submitted constructive recommendations to the Housing and Assets Scrutiny Committee. Even the chair acknowledged their value to me. Yet the cabinet member dismissed issues like damp, mould, fire safety, fire repairs, and fair repairs guarantee as irrelevant. That tells tenants everything they need to know. The General Fund, Mr. Mayor, and medium-term financial plan tell a similar story. Yes, the budget is technically balanced for 26-27, but only because it leans on temporary fixes, one-off grants, windfalls like the £11.7 million pensions review and £3.1 million airport dividend, optimistic assumptions and money parked in reserves. These mask a structural deficit reaching 11 million by 2030-31, created by years of conservative mismanagement. Inflation and demand pressures are understated. Children placements assume a 5% uplift, adult social care just 3.7%, despite national wage forecasts to be above 5.3%. There is still no workforce plan for children's services and continued reliance on expensive agency staff. We are asked to approve over £10 million for transformation with no defined plans, no quantified savings, no milestones, no governance beyond a newly created board. Design principles will be developed, potential areas will be considered. Hope, Mr. Mayor, is not a strategy. The capital programme totals £625 million, an ambition without affordability. Borrowing is front-loaded, yet the plan assumes financing costs to drop to zero in later years, an unbelievable assumption. Meanwhile, residents face maximum tax, maximum rents, and rising fees across burials, leisure, parking, and more. Individually small, collectively relentless. This is a budget that balances today by borrowing from tomorrow. Without structural reform and a credible transformation programme, Dudley faces significant financial risks over the coming years. We believe there is a better way, one rooted in fairness and prevention. Our amendment, Mr. Mayor, is fully costed and invests in people, not problems. We propose targeted investment through a marketplace initiative to tackle deep-rooted health inequalities, youth and community engagement officers to engage our young people, community protection officers to make our borough safer, a dedicated pothole inspector, telecare charge reductions, expanded welfare rights support, consultation on 100% council tax reduction for terminally ill residents, a 25% reduction for armed forces veterans, and that military compensation paid under recognised schemes is disregarded as income where there is local discretion. And practical support, Mr. Mayor, through lower wheelie bin replacement charges, free parking for leisure members, more grit bins, faster repairs to deep and dangerous potholes, restoring access to household waste recycling centre in the north of the borough. And Mr. Mayor, for the longer term reform, we propose seed funding for a neighbourhood health centre in one of our most deprived wards, demand reduction and prevention through public health and early help, adult social care redesign through strengths-based practice, children's sufficiency through building local capacity, corporate efficiency through removing silos, a dedicated team to leverage more money and funding into the borough. These are, Mr. Mayor, foundations of a sustainable council, not sticking plasters, but structural change. The choice tonight, Mr. Mayor, is quite clear: a budget that shifts risks and costs onto residents, or a budget that is honest, fair and transformative. Our amendment strengthens neighbourhoods, supports residents and builds a fairer Dudley. Mr. Mayor, I move the amendment. Thank you.
Is the amendment seconded?
Formally seconded, Mr Mayor, and I wish to speak if I may.
Yeah, okay, councillor, yeah.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It would have been the easiest thing in the world for us to stand here tonight and call for a lower council tax rise of 3.99 or even 2.99%. It might win a headline, it might look good on a leaflet, but we recognise the simple truth that the financial sustainability of this council is inextricably linked to the success of our borough. So instead of chasing short-term applause, we've brought forward an amendment with investment to save at its heart. It's strategic, it's practical, it's rooted in the long-term prosperity of Dudley, and it's proposals which benefit every resident of our borough, not just a few who happen to live in Liberal Democrat-held wards. An amendment that confronts the entrenched health inequalities, the reality that you're likely to live several years longer if you live in the south of Dudley than in the north. So that's why we're proposing funding a Marmot Place initiative to properly understand, then address the root causes of those inequalities. An amendment that tackles the hollowing out of youth provision by investing in 10 youth officers. Because if we're serious about prevention, about safer streets, about aspiration and opportunity, we must show up for our young people before problems escalate. And an amendment that responds to what residents raise with us week in and week out, the state of our roads. We're proposing the creation of what the press have called a pothole czar to assess, scrutinise and hold contractors to account for the poor quality repairs that frustrate our communities and waste public money. Each of our proposals is designed to support and reduce long-term costs to the wider system, such as the creation of a small army of community protection officers based on the Nottingham City Council model, boots on the ground who can flood our area suffering antisocial behaviour and work alongside police to resolve it. So we have 11 individual proposals paid for with a measured and strategic reduction in our contribution to contingencies. So, Mr Mayor, our amendment is not about grand gestures, it is about a balance of financial grip with investments in the health of our citizens, support for our young people, tackling antisocial behaviour, improving our roads, keeping our old people safe, and will throw in a cheaper replacement bin for good measure. It's not about the easiest option. It's about the right one for Dudley's future. Beginning to invest in services once again and giving Dudley residents something in return for the increase in council tax. So in closing, Mr Mayor, and with regard to the Liberal Democrat amendment, which I know we'll be discussing once it's moved, we absolutely support elements of that amendment which relate to a council tax reduction for terminally ill people and our armed forces. So much so that we've incorporated them into our amendment. So I do hope our Liberal Democrat friends will be able to support their own proposals. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Aston. The debate is now open on the amendment moved by Councillor Ali. I now call on members to indicate if they wish to speak on the amendment moved by Councillor Ali. And we have Andrea Goddard.
Mr Mayor, I thank my fellow councillor across the floor for working so hard on an amendment to try and improve the lives of those across the borough. However, I'm somewhat disappointed that the shadow cabinet member did not feel that he could meet with me to discuss some of the choices that he's made in his amendment. I always feel that I am extremely approachable and willing to listen and do all I can for a better deal within adult social care and public health in Dudley. Regarding Dudley's welfare rights team, it was evident that this was never the best way for those in need of support to get the right help they needed. And after discussions with the voluntary and community sector, it was far more beneficial to find extra funding for those who deliver the service as professionals much better than we do. The public need best value, not more wastage. Reducing telecare. Mr Mayor, how can the shadow cabinet member ask for this reduction when his party agreed to the rise in the Social Care and Wellbeing Committee? Finally, Mr Mayor, this is my main concern, and quite honestly, this makes my blood boil. As a party with a leader and deputy leader who work within the NHS alongside other colleagues across their party, how can you even entertain this, the murmur? It's quite frankly an outdated institution with inclusive evidence of all data, and we already have our own data. You can smile, but it's the fact. It's merely another layer of bureaucracy, a framework of principles that we have already implemented. Seriously, I'm at a complete loss as to why anyone would want to waste £250,000 of the public's money when you say about £1 of the money going missing or going on something that it shouldn't. This is £250,000 when we are already implementing these things. We are working, do you attend a health and wellbeing board? The principles are in that. We've got the neighbourhood policy where we are working with our community. We are working with the police. We are working with the fire. All of our partners we are working with. And you want another board meeting. You want another group of people to come together. In fact, it wouldn't be other group members. It would be the same members within this chamber and within this authority, and different people from outside that already attend these meetings, meeting again for what? To be discussing the same thing. I can think of £250,000 to spend elsewhere on directly the people of Dudley. Therefore, Mr Mayor, I cannot support this amendment. Thank you.
I call on Councillor Harley.
As Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care has just said, large part of the Labour amendment is a waste of time. It's outdated, overpriced, and it's 250k that really is just pouring good money down the drain. Welfare, CAB and others in the third sector, as Andrea has alluded to, are doing that job, and they're doing it far better than we ever could. 2 hours free car parking back under this administration. Vote against it if you like. Please, please do. But 2 hours free car parking. When we had 2 hours free car parking previously, there wasn't an issue at leisure centres. So that is an absolute nonsense in that amendment. Measures such as grip bins, additional inspectors, time spent to repair roads, grip bins, etc., they can be dealt with in the forthcoming winter maintenance review, which Councillor Phipps will head up. Community protection officers can be looked at once the new ASB policy is in. Why rush to implement something when we haven't seen the effectiveness of that new ASB policy? They may still be an additional add-on, or they may not be needed at all. So let's just wait on that. The Councillor Rowley says that this amendment is costed. It isn't costed. The 151 officer cannot support your proposals. You are paying for this by reducing reserves, which is what successive administrations have done in the past. And it just goes to show Labour are slowly bankrupting the UK at a national level. If they were in charge, they'd be taking £10 million over the mid-term financial period, £10 million out of those reserves. So not only do they bankrupt us at a national level, they'd have a jolly good job of doing it locally as well. Just to pick up on a few things that Councillor Rowley said about his amendment. Send programme, the send money, that is very welcome. And I'm really grateful that the government have stepped in and helped us there, because that is a big issue for every authority up and down the country. But Councillor Rowley paints this deal, this 3-year deal, as a utopia that, that they've, Rachel from accounts has rowed to Dudley's rescue. It's nothing of the sort, Mr Mayor. We have the second worst settlement in the West Midlands. So I'd like to thank their MPs, or not, for trying to get a decent deal for Dudley. It is not a decent deal. There is only Solihull who has had a worse settlement than us. And you have the audacity to talk about a 4.99% council tax increase. Of that £70 million, over 80% of that £70 million comes from a 4.99% council tax increase. So you have tied our hands behind our backs. Councillor Clark wanted to increase council tax by 3%. He can't, because you are forcing us, because 80% of that settlement is council tax increases. And you even had the audacity to get one of your shadow cabinet members to ask why we were increasing by 5% a few weeks ago. It's incredible. 80% of that additional spending power comes from council tax increases. And if we don't increase by the maximum, we get less money to invest in all of our services. So Walsall, Coventry, Wolverhampton, even Sandwell, all of them had a better settlement than Dudley did. So where was the representation locally and at a national level at Westminster? It just doesn't exist. And we got MPs cutting and pasting researchers' letters to the leader of the council and the chief executive, praising the fact that we've got £70 million more, but totally missing the point that 80% of it is council tax increases. So your amendment is not costed, it's not supported by the senior leadership team, and we certainly on this side of the chamber will not be voting for it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I now call on Councillor Ian Bevan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For once, this Labour amendment is well written. It sounds compassionate, proactive and ambitious. But good language, Mr. Mayor, does not equal good budgeting. When you strip it back, this amendment does one thing. It takes money set aside for financial resilience and spends it on new commitments. There are no new income streams here, no evidenced savings programme, no deliverable transformation plan. The funding comes from removing a contribution to reserves, reducing contingency across the medium term and using one-off public health reserves. It is not funded, Mr. Mayor, by structural improvement. It is funded by reducing protection. Many of the proposals create permanent cost. 20 additional officers, a welfare rights team, ongoing subsidies, service expansion. Those are recurring commitments, yet the funding sources are finite buffers and reduced contingency. This is a structural mismatch. You cannot fund permanent spending with temporary headroom and call it sustainable. We are told prevention will reduce demand. I support prevention. Cabinet supports prevention. But prevention is not a short-term cashable saving unless you can evidence the numbers. There is no quantified modelling here showing what will fall, by how much and in what year. Hope is not a funding strategy. On public health, let me say this clearly. Had they been listening over there, Mr. Mayor, they would already know that Dudley holds detailed public health intelligence at ward level. We have comprehensive health profiles identifying deprivation, inequality, long-term conditions, life expectancy and risk factors. That intelligence exists and it is robust. It was strengthened and developed while I held responsibility for public health. Public health intelligence in Dudley is amongst the strongest anywhere. We do not need to pay again to tell us what we already know. The issue is not diagnosis, it is delivery within a sustainable financial framework. Contingency, it's not spare cash, it exists for placements, spikes, temporary accommodation pressures, pay awards, inflation shocks, and volatility in demand across services. Reducing contingency does not remove the risk. It simply reduces our capacity to absorb it. Local government does not fail because of one dramatic decision. It fails when resilience is gradually weakened and optimism replaces prudence. This amendment balances on paper, but resilience is not about whether 1 year adds up. It's about whether we can absorb uncertainty without emergency decisions later. On this side of the chamber, we are ambitious for this borough, and that ambition is already visible in the work delivered across our communities. The difference tonight is that it's not about ambition, it's whether we build change on stable foundations so it lasts, or weaken those foundations in pursuit of short-term gain. The Section 151 advice is clear. This amendment increases financial risk and reduces resilience at a time when future gaps remain. As Cabinet members, we're not here to choose what sounds good, we're here to choose what lasts. For those reasons, Mr Mayor, I cannot support the amendment and I urge Council to reject it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I now call on Councillor Reid?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I rise in support of the Labour amendment to appoint 10 community protection officers with enhanced powers to tackle ASB and environmental health crimes, working hand in hand with the PCSOs, the police and existing council resources, because I believe this investment is a practical and proactive step in tackling antisocial behaviour across our borough. We know there are particular hotspots where ASB continues to cause cause for concern for residents and businesses. Deploying high visibility officers with enhanced powers to those areas would provide provide visible reassurance, early intervention and stronger presence on our streets. This is especially important in the town centre and around the marketplace where incidents increase as we move into the warmer months. Retailers and local businesses need to know that this council takes antisocial behaviour seriously. A visible street warden presence would not only deter inappropriate behaviour, but also help rebuild confidence in Dudley as a safe and welcoming place to shop and visit. I recently voted against a proposal for a 34-bed HMO in King Street because I believe we must carefully consider the excessive impact of developments in already pressured areas. We owe it to our residents and retailers to ensure that growth and housing decisions do not further intensify the existing challenges. Supporting this amendment demonstrates that we are prepared to take meaningful action to address antisocial behaviour and protect the viability of our town centre. This is about prevention, visibility and restoring confidence in our community. Thank you.
Councillor Pete Lowe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I note the amendment put forward by the Labour group and the fact that it's fully costed. Whilst I note the comments of the 151 officer with regard to his sustainability, the Black Country Party will be taking a similar approach to the Mayor at the last meeting and noting those comments but supporting the amendment. I note, as part of the conversation, we've already heard the leader of the Conservative group state, and I quote, "It is money down the drain with regard to an additional £250,000 for health inequality." Well, that pales into insignificance compared to the money that was spent on cans, which I would suggest was money down the drain. And for the rest of my contribution, I hear the comments with regard to the Marmot principles. Now, I also work in healthcare, and I'm sure the same as me, you will recognise the importance of many initiatives to address ill inequality within our wards. And our priority is any opportunity that from a fully costed amendment allows us to reshape our priorities by looking at the most vulnerable people in our community. We should take it. Because let us remember, that's what the 72 of us are here for. So when we received the Labour group amendment, I reflected on the headlines. Health inequality. I can go from one part of my ward, thanks to the initiative of Ian Bevan and many of the others in public health for providing those statistics, and my life expectancy changes by 8 years in 2026. So damn right will we support an amendment that will look at addressing that. My casework, I'm unsure whether I'm living in the twilight zone, and please have a discussion with me after. My casework has exponentially increased as a consequence of people not having access to welfare. Now, it may be because I represent one of the most deprived communities in our borough, but it is a fact. It is a fact that people are requiring that assistance. And the support that the council attempted to put in last year has simply not delivered in all of those places. So will we support 6 additional welfare rights advisors? Damn right we will. And that is the choice. It is fully funded. The 151 officer quite rightly outlines the risk, and then it becomes a matter of priority. Now, our priority, and I was speaking to good old Gladys just the other week, and we were talking about the £61 million in reserves by the end of this, and saying, Gladys, what would you do? And she goes, well, I may not be around in 3 or 4 years' time when we've got £61 million, but I was always brought up that if I had a little bit to spare, then I would invest that, early intervene to ensure that others got the benefit of that. Now, we have the privilege of approaching this in a non-party political manner. We can look at this in the interests of the communities that we serve. And each and every one of those bullet points reach out to our communities. They impact upon people that we are brought into this council chamber to represent. So we support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The point of order is that I believe that we have a member who has misled the chamber on the previous contribution. That is Councillor Reid. Voted against a 32-bedroom HMO at planning last week. I believe, and I'm sure this can be checked, she actually abstained on the 32-bedroom HMO in King Street and voted for the one HMO in Stourbridge. I'd like the member to correct that, please.
Mr. Mayor, move on.
Move on. Okay, we'll move on. Thank you for that. Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our amendment strives to support and develop our communities with a particular focus on supporting the most vulnerable and the least financially resilient. It also addresses previous ill-considered and counterproductive cost-cutting by this administration. The previous removal of the welfare rights team was not only a kick in the teeth for the most vulnerable, but could be defined as a massive own goal for the authority, given the ability of the team to put people back on a sustainable financial footing and enable them to pay their bills on time. People who struggle financially are more likely to default on their council tax and rent payments, and are equally more at risk from poor diet, poor health, reduced social well-being, and are more likely to end up requiring the safety net functions of the council through adults, children's and housing support. Potentially, therefore, the savings are part of the driver that we see pushing up demand for these services and ultimately costing the council and thereby the council taxpayer more and not less. The reintroduction of such a scheme is a no-brainer, and I would hope all in this chamber would support the initiative. Improving the youth offer is something else that can be seen as financially sound and helping to reduce longer-term costs by diverting those at risk of crime and disorder into more meaningful outcomes. Again, meaningful support in this area at the right time can, by reducing crime and ASB, have a positive contribution, not only to our communities, but to council finances. Reintroducing the facility to acquire additional grip bins would constitute another reversal of a previous cost saving. The cost savings that were destined to cost more by requiring a more wide-ranging and responsive gritting service. Our proposed reduction in telecare costs, whilst I accept will pose a challenge to the service, will support those most vulnerable and in some cases severely ill, severely at risk from sudden illness or disability, who currently cannot afford to utilise the support of the telecare service. It's also worth noting that the introduction of charges was supposedly to allow for the funding of the service switchover to digital, but currently the range of digitally connected gadgets is much less than the range under the analogue system, resulting in a poorer service for those paying and increased risk for some of those dependent on the tech supplied. Taken together, the measures in the Labour Group amendment are well considered and provide benefit to both the public and ultimately, in many cases, a reduction in costs to the council by providing a greater independence, better outcomes for our community and ultimately reduced dependence on wider council services. I urge all in this chamber to support our amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Kesey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Reform Group absolutely shares the ambition to make life better for the residents of Dudley Borough. Every councillor in this chamber wants stronger communities, better services, safer neighbourhoods and improved opportunities for our residents. The issue before us tonight is not ambition, it's delivery, and more important, financial reality. Before turning to the detail of the amendment itself, it's important to reflect on the advice provided by the Section 151 officer. That advice is clear in highlighting risks, pressures and potential consequences associated with the proposals before us. It reminds us of the fragile financial position facing local government and the importance of maintaining resilience within our budget framework. However, it's also important to be accurate about what that advice does and does not say. Nowhere in the Section 151 officer's advice does it state that accepting this amendment would prevent Dudley from setting a legal budget. What it does provide are warnings, risk assessments and predictions about potential financial pressures. Ultimately, it is for this council to decide whether and how that advice is taken on board. But we must also recognise how local government reached this position. Councils across the country did not become financially fragile overnight. 14 years of cuts and austerity significantly reduced core funding to local authorities. That long period of sustained reductions hollowed out financial resilience, increased reliance on reserves and contingency, and left councils managing rising demand with shrinking resources. That is the backdrop against which we are making this decision tonight. Turning to the Labour Group's amendment itself, it's clear that what we have before us, in many respects, is a substantial wish list of proposals which, if fully funded, would undoubtedly improve aspects of life across the borough. The difficulty, however, is not whether these ideas sound good. The difficulty is whether they are financially credible within the resources currently available to the council. Local government does not have unlimited capacity to absorb additional spending without sustainable income streams. The Labour Group has set out how it believes this amendment could be funded, and that should be acknowledged. However, the Section 151 officer has clearly alerted us to the risks associated with that approach, specifically that it would leave council reserves in a more vulnerable position and reduce the financial resilience that protects this authority against future pressures. That is the key issue before us tonight. The amendment sets out a range of initiatives which may sound attractive on paper, but the central question remains not simply whether funding can be identified today, but whether it remains sustainable in the longer term without exposing the council to increased financial risk. Dudley Council could indeed deliver many of the measures proposed by the Labour Group, but only if the necessary funding followed them. Without that sustainable funding, this amendment risks being less a credible long-term financial plan and more a catalogue of aspirations. And that brings us to the current reality. We now have a national Labour government. Dudley Borough is represented by 3 Labour members of Parliament for Dudley, Stourbridge and Hales Owen. If this ambitious programme is to move from aspiration to delivery, then additional dedicated funding must be secured from central government. Put simply, Dudley could have everything outlined in this amendment if National Labour delivers the funding to pay for it. Ultimately, the Reform Group believes residents deserve honesty as much as ambition. It's easy to promise everything. It's harder, but more responsible, to deliver what is genuinely affordable and sustainable after years of financial strain on local government. Reform will always support policies that improve lives, but we will not support unfunded wish lists that risk placing future financial burdens on Dudley residents. If Labour wishes to see this vision realised, then the answer lies not in reallocating risk within Dudley's already stretched budget, but in ensuring their national government provides Dudley with the funding it needs. Until then, ambition without funding remains aspiration, and residents deserve more than aspirations. Residents don't just want promises, they want realism and delivery. We applaud the ethos, but question the delivery. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
From 4 of the 5 political groups represented here. Therefore, I move that the vote be put.
Have we got a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Second.
Okay, I move that we move on to the vote then. I think that's been debated quite enough.
Mr. Mayor, you've got to vote. We've got to vote.
On the amendment?
No, on the fact that the vote is put.
Yes.
Councillors, we will now vote on whether to put the vote.
For the amendment.
For the amendment.
For the amendment, yeah.
Some clarity about what the vote is for.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, and provide clarification to members. So Councillor Harley and formally seconded as well, is that the amendment that has been presently be debated be moved to a vote. So there will be a vote on whether to move to the vote, and then thereafter there will be a vote on the amendment itself.
So still yeah. Oh.
All members voted. Steve, have all members voted? Yeah, okay. Okay. Just to confirm, Mr. Mayor, that has been lost, so we will continue with the debate on the amendment.
Councillor Daniel Bevan.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. At the last meeting, we were criticised for not submitting amendments to the council early enough, yet today at 12:45 the opposition submitted their amendment. By 3:30 they then amended their amendment. Mr Mayor, if the opposition are not confident in their own figures for 3 hours, why should the residents of the Dudley Borough be? Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Ali, your amendment is not supported by the Section 151 officer. Your amendment does not carry the professional financial assurance that this chamber and the residents of Dudley should expect when setting a lawful and responsible budget. And it's also worth noting that Councillor Ali is smirking at that as well. Budget setting is not theatre. It's not about scrambling to produce last-minute headlines. It's months of hard work and dedication to ensuring that we have a suitable budget. This budget reflects months and months of officer and cabinet members' work and members of scrutiny also. It reflects realism about pressures. It reflects choices made carefully and deliberately. Criticism is part of this chamber, but let's not create a false narrative. This budget has not appeared overnight or in an afternoon, Councillor Ali. It has been built over months of engagement, scrutiny and professional advice. I cannot support the opposition's amendment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Councillor Kayam.
Oh, sorry, okay. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I rise to support the Labour Group amendment, particularly the 100,000 investment for grit bins and the pothole inspector, because residents deserve more than warm words and delayed reviews. We are being told a review is coming, but frankly, that feels like kicking the issue into the long grass. People need action, not another promise that quietly disappears. We all saw the result of the Conservative administration's decision to strip 60,000 out of last year's winter maintenance budget. The result was chaos. Entire neighbourhoods came to a standstill. Grit bins disappeared without councillors or residents being informed, and those that remained were left empty. Even now, as we move into warmer weather, many bins are still unfilled despite repeated assurances. I'm still getting calls from residents who check their bins and find nothing. So yes, 100,000 is not only reasonable, it's necessary. And then there are the potholes. Yesterday in St Thomas's, I saw some of the worst road conditions I have come across. Deep, dangerous craters that put drivers, cyclists and pedestrians at real risk. These have been reported, yet weeks later they remain untouched. This is the reality on the ground, and it bears no resemblance to the Conservative administration's claim that they are on top of road maintenance. We know Dudley received 3.6 million for pothole repairs last year. We now know that the West Midlands Labour Mayor, Richard Parker, recently announced 240 million for 6 authorities, including Dudley. But none of that investment seems to be reaching the communities I represent. Perhaps that's because the administration's priority lies elsewhere. Certainly not in the wards that need the most support. That's why the 500,000 investment proposed in this amendment for potholes repair is so important. It will allow the council to tackle the worst potholes quickly and finally give residents the safe roads they are entitled to. Residents in St Thomas's are not asking for the earth. They want safe streets, basic maintenance and a council that listens rather than dismisses their concerns. This amendment delivers on those expectations. The Conservative administration has had years to get the basics right, and the state of our roads shows they simply haven't. I urge everyone to back this amendment and show residents that this council is willing to invest in the essentials that keep our borough moving. Thank you.
Councillor Atkins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Members of the council, this debate is not about whether we all want good outcomes for our residents. Of course we do. It's about whether this council sets a budget that is safe, lawful and financially responsible. And on that point, the position tonight is crystal clear. Our most senior financial officer, the financial professional with the legal duty to advise this council on the robustness of the budget and the adequacy of our reserves, has given advice on this amendment that could not be more direct. They state that adoption of this Labour amendment cannot be supported, and that should give every councillor in this chamber pause. Now, I'm sure Labour will try and wrap this amendment in comforting words like inequalities, frontline, communities. We all care about those things, but caring is not a substitute for competence and compassion is not a substitute for arithmetic. This amendment proposes a raft of spending commitments across the General Fund and then seeks to pay for them not through credible recurring savings, not through properly evidenced transformation plans, but by weakening the very protections this council that keep this council financially stable. The advice is spelt out. It says, in black and white, without additional savings identified, Labour's approach is to fund this package by reducing planned reserves, cutting our contingency and using the public health reserve. And the result? An additional cumulative cost of around £8.5 million at a time when we have only recently turned the corner on our financial security. This is not sustainable. Colleagues, you do not strengthen communities by weakening the council's resilience. You do not protect frontline services by draining the contingency that shields those services when demand spikes, when inflation bites, or when a contract goes wrong. You do not reduce inequality by setting this authority on a path towards future cuts because you have spent tomorrow's safety net today. So what we have is not a discipline programme. It is not a costed deliverable plan. It is spending first and justification later. And here is the most troubling point of all. Labour had this feedback before tonight. They knew their own Section 151 officer could not support their amendment. They knew it weakened reserves and contingencies. They knew it introduced additional financial risks and reduced the council's longer-term resilience. And yet, in their arrogance or their incompetence, they pressed ahead and submitted it anyway. Councillor Ellie said earlier, decisions need to be evidence-based. What we have here is evidence that the Labour group shouldn't be let 1,000 leagues near a budget. Mr Mayor, if you want to make political points, do it honestly. Don't ask this chamber to ignore statutory financial advice. Do not ask us to pretend that raiding reserves is a plan. Do not ask us to gamble with the financial stability of the council, because when the gamble fails, it is residents who pay through reduced services, higher costs and emergency cuts. The Conservative group will not do that. We will back a balanced budget that is properly risk assessed, that builds resilience and that keeps the council on a stable path in a very challenging years ahead. So tonight I say to colleagues across this chamber, whatever your politics, whatever your priorities, listen to the one person whose job it is to tell us impartially about affordability and risk. And when considering these financial decisions, as we do tonight, responsible councillors do not roll the dice and bet on the future. We reject this amendment. We stand up for sound finance, we stand up for residents, and we stand up for a council that lives within its means. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for this opportunity to speak to our amendment on behalf of veterans. I have to declare a member's interest. I joined the Air Force in 1988 because I needed to get out to get on. I wanted to get married, and it came with a virtually free home. I served for 23 years throughout the world. I may have been exposed to depleted uranium. I definitely carry injuries and really need to address my hearing. When I looked to move my family home, the council offered nothing. Despite being on the housing register for years, no additional preference for housing, no access through a Forces Help to Buy scheme. When I left the military, I left for many reasons, but it wasn't easy. I withdrew completely from Forces life. Chasing employment was unknown to me throughout my adult life. Suddenly, life insurance became possible and necessary. Most concerning, though, was I didn't realise how institutionalised I was. I did struggle, but I had amazing support from family. Many aren't so lucky. Since becoming a councillor, I have re-engaged with Forces. Through the RBL, helped several vets with housing, tax and caring issues. Personally, for the first time in 15 years, I spoke to other vets about trauma, but also about the good times. I believe the measures to consult for the 2027-28 budget builds on this fantastic work, the fantastic work this government has done with the Armed Forces Bill, renewing 40,000 military homes, providing decency again after the appalling decisions made over the last 14 years. It also builds locally on Armed Forces Covenant, extending housing, healthcare, education and public services to veterans. It does come with a warning though. If passed, it must not suffer like previous commitments. Many years ago, Alderman Dave Tyler secured Dudley's commitment to the Covenant and ensured veterans had preferential treatment when applying for social homes. The Housing Act 2012, number 2989. By 2024, there were no visible signs that this was being applied. I challenged this, it went to legal advice, and Housing admitted that their application of the policy was wrong. A resident, Ben, went from 175 on the housing list to number 1 every time when this correction was made. This means this must not happen again. Unfortunately, dismayed by his treatment, Ben moved his family to another local authority as they fulfilled all his housing requirements going forward. To conclude, veterans need more help, and these measures will be a great start, leading towards fairness in local taxation and support for our veterans. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Priest.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got to admit, I didn't realise there'd be so many Labour members waiting to hear the Lib Dems speak, but I do appreciate it, so thank you. And in that spirit of thanks, I'd also like to thank Councillor Aston for what, in my view, has been a really productive pre-budget working between the parties in the chamber, and I think that's a really important feature of a council, particularly in a council that's in no overall control. And I'm sure we won't necessarily see eye to eye on everything tonight, but actually being able to have those conversations, I think, has been really useful to find common ground. Although I will admit I am confused which leader the Labour group is going to be voting with tonight. We've heard from Councillor Aston talking about how a council tax rise is necessary and that's good finance, and then a speech from Councillor Ali about how it is a disgusting attack on the residents of Dudley. I'm not sure which one it is, but I guess we'll find out shortly. And as I was working my way down the Labour Party's list earlier when it was published, I couldn't help but smirk. You know, we all know that imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and it proves what I've long suspected, that not only do the hardest working Labour councillors end up as Liberal Democrats, but their best policies come from the Liberal Democrats too. Council tax discount for armed forces veterans, council tax discount for terminally ill patients. I'm pleased to have your support on those, and a huge increase for community forum funding. I'm pleased to have your support on that too. But then as I work through the other items on this amendment, I see line after line of things that the administration either already doing or in the process of beginning to do. Meanwhile, I hear speeches from Labour Party colleagues so shamelessly produced by ChatGPT. I'm struggling to see where there is any sentient thought from the Labour Party has gone into this amendment at all. A list of policies put together by the Liberal Democrats, a list of actions already been worked on by the administration, proposed to this chamber with AI-produced speeches. It's the party of the workers has become the party of the imitators. Of course, there's one exception to this. After 14 years in opposition nationally, after nearly a decade in opposition locally, after inflicting a national insurance rise on the borough's businesses, cuts to disabled people across the borough, after an income tax thresholds frozen and their war on our green belt launched, we see just one policy tonight that they've come up with all on their own. Reduce the price of wheelie bins just a little bit. And it's laughable that that's the height of the Labour Party's ambition in Dudley, that wheelie bins are a little bit cheaper. So for the avoidance of any doubt, we won't support the Labour Party's amendment tonight, not because we disagree with the content, but because we're appalled with its execution. It's an amendment that delivers more of the same, but at greater cost and cheaper bins. Thank you.
Councillor Asif Hamid.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just firstly off topic, I think in terms of what you mentioned, Councillor Harley, about the minutes of that meeting, can you just double check, please? Because she was one of the main spokespeople against the application. Now, I haven't got a script prepared here, so apologies for if there's no structure. I'm trying to just pick up on a few comments that were made from both sides, or from all sides, sorry. So firstly, Councillor Goddard, I really get on with you, and I've got no issues with you, but I think you did mention today about, there's a potential waste of money from our side. And again, I think it's scaremongering, because what we're suggesting, there's no evidence that it will be a waste of money. If anything, you want to look back at what we've seen in the local press over the last couple of years, there's a long list of money being wasted. So there's evidence there from the Conservatives. So you might want to just refer back to that. There was also comments made about the Section 151 officer and the recommendation. I know I'm correct in this, that, the books do balance. It's illegal. The budget that we're proposing, or the amendment, is legal. It's within the remit. The Section 151 officer, a competent 151 officer, has said there's potential risks. And I'll be very surprised if there's any 151 officer out there that says about any budget, this is absolutely perfect. Because otherwise, there's no point of having a meeting. We'll have one party with the 151 officer get together, set your own budget. It doesn't work that way. So again, you can't pick and choose when you want to follow the 151 officer. A couple of weeks ago, you had no problem with going against his advice. So that argument fails there. Councillor Bevan mentioned our local authority has got brilliant intelligence within the ward or within the borough. It's probably true, but the reality is I haven't seen any evidence of us using that. There's no benefit to that evidence. So us proposing ideas which maybe, we might get better results for the people of Dudley. I don't think we can be challenged or for that, or attacked for that, sorry. It's also suggested that we're wasting the council's money. Now, at no point have we said in our amendment that we're going to use up all of, there's no contingency, there's no savings at all. We've not said that. That's the impression that's been given. What we're saying is we recognise there's a need for saving money, 100%. But at the same time, we're also saying that this isn't a one-sided relationship where all we keep doing every year is saying to the locals, give us more money in council tax, give us more money in council tax. And as a result, all we're doing is underspending, and we're just saving the money. We're not giving anything back. What we're saying is we are going to save money under our proposals or our amendment, but at the same time, we're going to give something back to the community. And we're going to give, hence the reason why we've got those lists, because we're trying to do what we can for as many people as we can within the borough. There's no point also of saving up all this money and leaving all these repairs that need doing across our borough, because what's going to happen is those repairs that are being neglected now are going to get worse and worse. So this pot of money that you've got, eventually, by the time you think about using that pot of money, the works would have got to such a level that we haven't got enough money left in the pot. So again, I completely disagree with that comment. It's nice to hear Councillor Harley say about we need to lobby our government. I completely agree. Lobby our government, lobby our MPs, but it's a shame that he's not been saying that for previous years. I remember not too many years ago, there was a Fair Deal for Dudley motion put forward before this council. After that day, or that vote, not once have I heard anyone from the Conservatives ever mention lobbying the government. All of a sudden, now that we're getting a little bit of extra money from the government, you can argue on how much it is. We know it's in the millions, and we know for a change, we're actually getting more than we did a few years ago. All of a sudden, you want to lobby him. I'm all on side, but don't pretend like, you've been doing that for years, because the word continuing to lobby was used, and that's completely incorrect. The other argument about not working with the Tories. We've tried on a number of occasions. I've certainly, from my side, I always encourage our group to work with other parties. But what we've seen very clearly is that the Conservatives only want to work with the Lib Dems, so much so that I don't think there's any point of them calling themselves Lib Dems anymore. They might as well become Tories, because as far as I can see, there's absolutely no difference. And again, Councillor Lowe, you mentioned that casework has, I think you said in the welfare section, has increased. The reality is it's increased across the board. And what we're trying to do with our list that keeps getting attacked, the purpose of the list is to address that, so we don't have to stand in the council and say, as they did a few weeks ago, we are sorry, we will do better. Thank you.
Councillor Steve Edwards.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. To be fair, Asif covered a lot of what I was going to say anyway regarding the 151 officer and the advice being legal. I think we've got to be careful that we don't muddy the waters here to make the chamber or the people listening upstairs that the 151 officer has advised that it would create an illegal budget, because that's not the case. It would still be a balanced budget of terms. When we're looking at the long-term effects of this, we're looking at over a period of so many years of having reserves of 61 million. With the Labour amendment, I think we'd still have reserves of 55, 56 million pound in reserves. And the point of the reserves are they're actually a contingency, they're there for a rainy day. And I think sometimes we actually forget that when we wait for this rainy day, it's actually pouring down now. So, you know, sometimes we need to invest to save and to make people's lives better. So that's why I'll be supporting the amendment.
I call on Councillor Steve Clark to exercise his right of reply to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to have to correct Councillor Ali here. There was a number of things. The amount of figures that he gave at the beginning were mixing everything up, and I accused the MPs of and the government of gaslighting last month. Double accounting is what I'm accusing you of now. In terms of the settlement, and I'm going to tell everybody exactly what the truth is about this settlement. The £76 million that was coming in from the government, that £76 million, the first part of that was down to 2024 and 25, which was not accounted for in the present budget. So that was complete nonsense. So what happens is that we are left with £44 million that has been so-called invested into Dudley Council. Out of that £44 million that's invested, that includes 3 years of council tax at 4.99%. This is what you're saying, that we need to reduce council Atherton to 3.99, but your government has forced us to make sure that we have it at its maximum level for at least the next 3 years of 4.99%. That then brought the amount that the government was giving us down to 7 million. It's actually about 7.1 million pounds that the government was giving us, which is what we were expecting there. We were expecting 18 million pounds, because the way that the council's finance is done is that we have government grants, we have council tax, and we have business rates. That's the way we make up our money. So expecting 18 million pounds as a settlement, we get 7 in the draft settlement. Since then, the final settlement, we've had a further £5.1 million, which is the 11.1 million that you said, but you then talked about the settlement, the draft settlement, and the extra bit that's coming in. It's complete lies. And please, Councillor Ahmed, do not believe the lies that you're getting here, because if you're going to be brought down with it, and it's just completely wrong. You mentioned the £240 million that the Mayor has got. That is for the combined authority. That is for all of us to use. Now, what your government has done very well, and I've got to say, the SEND deficit, where they are going to be spending 90%, they're going to pay off 90% of that, is very, very welcome. It's very welcome for Dudley. But what that does leave is that at the moment we're at £60 million with a deficit there. If they're paying off 90% of that, that is going to leave £6 million. They're not going to be paying that off for the next 2 years. As we are spending £15 million a year on that SEND deficit, that is going to leave us, again, £1.5 million over the next 2 years. If we add that to the £6 million that you said, we are still going to be left with an issue in 2 years' time of nearly £9 million. So just going back to that 4.99 government, the council tax, we don't have a choice. In order to balance these books, we do not have a choice. You also mentioned about the pensions and the superannuation. You said it's a one-off. It's not. It's ongoing. You got that completely wrong. Fully costed? It might be fully costed, but it's actually going to cost us an extra £6 million over the next 3 years. Now, Mr. Mayor, the Labour amendment suffers from the same fatal flaw. It weakens reserves. It's at precisely the moment when they need to be protected. It ignores clear financial advice and risk and gambles with the stability of this council. This is not responsible leadership, and we will not support this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I will now put the amendment to the vote. For clarity, members are voting on the amendment moved by Councillor Shaukat Ali. We now go to the vote. That is lost. I now call on Councillor Pete Lowe to speak on the motion on behalf of the Black Country Group.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just before I start with my relatively brief contribution, I'd just like to confirm to Councillor Priest that in no way, shape or form will this contribution be AI generated. 12 months ago, I sat on the Labour benches and actually was part working alongside Shaukat in putting forward the opposition to the £41 million worth of Conservative Party cuts that will have a disproportionate impact upon our communities. And I'm sure I speak for everybody within this chamber when I say that we've seen the effects of that over the last 12 months. Within a month of those events, Mr. Mayor, I found myself, due to my own government, of which I've been a member of for 41 years, proposing billions of pounds worth of welfare cuts and some of the issues that they were embarking on an international scale, actually questioning whether I still belong within that party. And that is why I now find myself with a few colleagues sitting here as leader of the Black Country Party. And I say that, Mr. Mayor, because for the first time in my tenure as a local elected representative, I've been able to sit here and watch the debate. And I think it's fair to say that many of the things that people said to me on the doorsteps over all of those 20 years actually are further embedded by what we're seeing this evening. We've got the Conservative Party, quite rightly, totally understand Councillor Clark and his contribution, getting up and blaming the Labour government for the lack of funding for local government. I acknowledge it. Thank goodness I'll never be a Tory, but if I was a Tory, I may well use some of the rhetoric to that. But of course, the reality is it falls apart very, very quickly, because what Councillor Clark talks about is the importance of fair funding. And I think all of us will be aware, as we didn't really see a great deal of that fair funding and the importance of fair funding in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, or, my goodness, a general election, the colour of the rosette changes, and all of a sudden now what we really need to do, Mr Mayor, is prioritise the importance of fair funding. So we've had, and I think by everybody's consensus here this evening, 8 years of missed opportunities. 8 years before he wakes up, smells at fair trade coffee, and recognises maybe what we should be doing is going to the government for fair funding. And my belief is you should be doing that, Councillor Clark, irrespective of the colour of that rosette. And when a number of us, many of us now in this party, but a few good friends remaining within the Labour group, we pressed you meeting after meeting, year after year. Silence. Not once did we get a response. And now that tone changes. Now there's an element of truth in what Councillor Clark outlines. Now, many people will know from my own point of view, I have said for over 20 years that the council tax system, by definition, is the most regressive tax system in this country. It disproportionately impacts upon the poorest in our community. That's not just a Dudley issue or a Sandwell issue, that's a local government issue. And I would have hoped that one of the priorities of a newly formed Labour government would be to look towards, at pace, changing that in the interests of the communities that we would wish to serve. Councillor Clark's also correct with regard to the 4.99% council tax increase. And many of us within this council chamber, some of us now both recently departed and long departed, have argued the way that Dudley has been treated in those settlement figures. When we compare ourselves, our revenue compared to Walsall, we're about £20–25 million per year worse off because of the issues around council tax and the insistence under the previous administration to look at grants as opposed to building it into the base. So that's a historical reality. I'd like to welcome and congratulate Councillor Clark for waking up after the long sleep and seeing that the government has now changed, and all of a sudden we can look towards mentioning a fair deal for Dudley. Many thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. I now call on Councillor Ryan Priest to speak on the motion on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group. I understand that Councillor Priest will move an amendment at the conclusion of his speech. Just to indicate there that Councillor Priest will have 5 minutes to speak on the motion and 5 minutes to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If it's okay with you, I'll move the amendment and then reserve the right to speak on the motion as amended after the if it's amended. Thank you. Now, I don't necessarily agree with everything that's in the budget tonight, but I do recognise the effort that's gone into it. So I want to start by thanking officers, cabinet members, and those of us who are in scrutiny committees for the work that's gone into to get the budget to this point. And I'm also aware that on a night like tonight, I'm probably meant to stand up here and say that it's a disaster, that it's a scandal that you're doing these horrible things and demand resignations. But the truth is that this budget is just okay. It doesn't rock the boat. It keeps reserves healthy. Most residents wouldn't notice it passing at all. Its greatest crime is that it's politically beige. In a sense, that's a really traditional Dudley budget. It's a few adjustments here and there, council tax kept within the usual bounds, and the borough kept afloat for another year. And that's not happened by accident, it's shaped by necessity. Councils across the country are under huge strain, and many have taken far more dramatic steps. In my ward, in Cradley and Woodescote, we sit between two authorities. In the north, we have Sandwell, in the south, we have Worcestershire. We look over our southern border and see something remarkable. Worcestershire County Council now run by Reform UK, after campaigning to cut council tax and slash waste, has taken their begging bowl to the government for permission to raise council tax by 9%. That's the biggest increase of anywhere in the country from a party that told voters they would do the opposite less than a year ago. And whatever our disagreements in the chamber, I do think it's worth recognising that Dudley has not gone down that road, something that we should all welcome. Now, this council, Now, this council has resisted the temptation to run to Westminster asking for permission to dig deeper into residents' pockets. So yes, this budget keeps the borough afloat, but keeping the borough afloat cannot be the ambition forever. Dudley has an opportunity. Reserve contributions have come in stronger than expected over the last year, and that gives the council a choice. We can continue to drift from one cautious budget to the next, or we can begin to turn the page. The Liberal Democrats believe that it's time to close the chapter of crisis and begin the chapter of renewal. People want to see change in the areas they live. They want roads repaired. They want their parks improved, safer crossings for their children, and pride restored into the places they call home. They want to feel that the council is investing in their community rather than simply managing the decline. And that's what the Liberal Democrat amendment tonight is about. It accepts the reality of tight finances, but it argues that even within those limits, better choices can be made. Our amendment invests in the basics that residents ask us about every day. Additional parking on estates where streets were never designed for the number of cars that families now have, including improvements around the Wollaston Farm Estate and Oakfield Road in Woolscote. It means investments in parks, particularly Swanpool Park and Spring Meadow Park. The state of both should be a shame to the borough. It also means that problems which have long been ignored are finally tackled. My own gripe is the amount of fly tipping so constantly dumped on Foxcote Lane. It's becoming a disgrace. And the Liberal Democrat amendment finally forces some action, be that CCTV cameras or changes to the road layout. Now, these are very small changes, perhaps in the context of a council budget, but they have very real changes to people's daily lives. And so I'm particularly proud that the Liberal Democrat amendment also gives back to the community and volunteer groups who keep our borough running by increasing the Community Forum grant for the first time in a decade. An extra £125,000 every year invested into our communities. In short, this amendment says that stability doesn't mean that the borough has to stand still, and that Dudley is better than the story it's so often told its residents, and its residents have so often told us. That our strong communities and our proud neighbourhoods and people who care deeply about where they live deserve some investment back. They want to see a council that matches their pride with ambition. And so, Mr Mayor, I'm pleased to move the Liberal Democrat amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Priest. Councillor Troutman, you're making your way there. Welcome. Yeah, I'll say that. Is the amendment seconded?
Formally seconded, Mr Mayor. If I may, thank you. Residents in Cradley and Woolscote did not elect me to come into this chamber to play political games. They elected me to fight for every single penny I could secure to ensure it is invested back into our community, into our roads, driving down crime, and into the community groups that keep the cogs of our neighbourhoods turning. When this budget was first presented, it was balanced, steady as she goes. But steady as she goes is not enough for communities that have stood still for far too long. With the Liberal Democrat amendment, this budget opens a new chapter for Cradley and Woolscote. It begins to address the problems that have plagued our communities for a generation. We are taking action to tackle speeding on Lyde Green and on the other side of the ward on Brook Holloway too. We are investing in resurfacing some of the borough's worst affected roads, notably Furlong Lane in Cradley. And on the issue that has been wall to wall on social media and filling up my inbox, fly tipping on Foxcote Lane. At long last, with this amendment, we can deliver action. Make no mistake about it, the Liberal Democrats are getting the job done in Cradley and Woolscote and across the Dudley Borough. This budget, with our amendment,
would prove it. For over a decade under the Conservative government and now 2 years of a Labour government, neither of the two old parties have truly grasped the scale of the crisis in local government finance. We see the evidence of that crisis every single day. Services that once was core functions of the council now slowly becoming nice to haves and have been cut altogether. We see delays on road repairs. We see face-to-face services reduced further and further. We see deteriorations in our town centres and on our council estates. I was born and raised on the Townhouse estate in Cradley, and I remember the pods. My sister used to live in one. These were replaced by wooden planters, which have not been maintained since the day they went in the ground. I remember a close-knit community on the Townhouse estate. We're working together and working with the local authority. Over the course of my lifetime, I have seen the gradual breakdown of that relationship and the slow decline in investment. So perhaps not all measures in this budget and the Lib Dem amendment are big and headline grabbers. Every item may not transform lives overnight, but by restoring pride in our communities, that also matters too. This is why I am proud of the Liberal Democrat amendment that we've put forward that would repair and replace the planters on the Townhouse estate. I know it's not big politics, but one of the simplest things a council can do is to make our communities nicer to live in. Because when we talk about a financial crisis, when we talk about the social care crisis, it is easy to focus only on the pressures and the deficits. But building communities that residents can be proud of is also a fundamental function of local government. With this Lib Dem amendment, it's about practical action. It's about visible improvements. It's about showing residents that we are listening and we are delivering. And in Cradley and Woolscote, the Liberal Democrats are doing exactly that. Thank you.
Thank you. The debate is now on the amendment moved by Councillor Priest, and I call on Councillor Adam Aston.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just over 18 months ago, the Labour government inherited an economy in tatters. Less of a stable platform, more of a burning skip in a poorly maintained Dudley Council car park. Public services were falling apart. Local government finances have been hollowed out after 14 long years of failure, supported in the early days by the Liberal Democrats. And yet, tonight, we're treated to a self-indulgent waffle from the Liberal Democrats seeking to pin the blame of all of this onto Labour. Because what we have before us is not a serious attempt to improve the council's finances or its services. It's a budget amendment that's wrapped in a preamble so dubious it reads more like a party leaflet than an actual proposal. Naturally, we'll be inclined to reject that on that basis alone. But then we look at the substance of the amendment, and what do we get? We get a shopping list of unresolved casework, like individual issues, I accept, however important locally, that have been stitched together into some kind of budget amendment as though this chamber were an oversized casework inbox on the My Dudley Councillor app. If only Councillor Priest could have resisted the urge to politicise this. If only he'd risen above the grubbiness, because buried in the amendment are measures which we can support, particularly support for discretionary council tax relief for residents living with terminal illness. A measure, I understand, which was first created and implemented by Labour-led Manchester City Council, so bravo Manchester City Council, and the council tax reduction in recognition of the service of armed forces personnel. Instead, we're left debating potholes by postcode. No, that is not ChatGPT, that is me, that's my genius. Martin, you can have that one. Potholes by postcode. I would gently say to the Conservative members opposite, can you really vote for an amendment that prioritises Wollaston and Cradley over your own wards. I represent residents in Upper Gornal who look at Quarry Brow, which is quite frankly in a state of repair that rivals anywhere that's mentioned in the amendment, and ask me when their time will come. How do we justify telling them that another area has leapfrogged the queue because of amendment to a budget report? Every single ward in this borough has roads in need of repair. Every councillor in this chamber could produce a list that long. But that is precisely why highways investment should be strategic, borough-wide, and not decided by whoever offers a few votes in this chamber at this meeting. If the Liberal Democrats want consensus, they should draft amendments that build it. If they want cross-party support, they should avoid this partisan preamble that they shoehorn into their amendment. So we can't support the political posturing. We could have supported some of the stuff in that amendment. We have blatantly stolen other stuff out of that amendment, but sadly we won't be able to support the amendment in its current form. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ali.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Liberal Democrat amendment seems to get worse every year. Last year, we watched them sell themselves for £75,000 bribe for a town council that no one wanted. Not residents, not even the Conservative Party wanted it. And they accuse us of political games. Conservatives were so desperate to avoid the humiliation of bankruptcy that they gave in to the Liberal Democrats' demand last year. And now tonight, we are presented with something that is not a budget amendment at all. It is a catalogue of casework, a document that frankly fails every test of strategic financial planning. A budget is supposed to be a strategic instrument. It should align resources to priorities, manage risks, and it doesn't meet any of the guidance of CIPFA, principles that are in line with clear line of sight between investment and outcome. This amendment doesn't do any of that. Instead, it offers a cocktail of hyper-local schemes, resurfacing this street, adding parking to that cul-de-sac, and so on. It reads less like a medium-term financial strategy and more like a ward walkabout written as a capital programme. We are not against the issues raised, as Councillor Adam Aston has said. Every one of us could produce a very long list of problems in our wards that need urgent attention. But casework should not sit in a drawer for 12 months and wait for the budget meeting. If the Conservative administration supports this approach, they are setting a precedent that casework belongs in the budget debate. Councillor Harley always says, why wait until the next council meeting to raise this and raise that? Let's see if he's going to say the same to the Liberal Democrats tonight. Lib Dems want to pit one ward against another. Do they not realise there are 24 wards in the borough, not just the ones they happen to represent? Astonishingly short-sighted. CIPFA guidance is explicit in the council must avoid budget built on fragmented, unprioritised spending that lacks strategic coherence. Yet that is exactly what we have. No assessment of borough-wide need because they're just focusing on their own ward. Just a list of things individual councillors would quite like to see in their patch. And crucially, it does not tackle health inequalities. It does not fund transformation. It does not fund prevention. It is not strategic budgeting. Mr. Mayor, Lib Dems claim the amendment represents renewal, but renewal requires a plan. Renewal requires a vision for the whole borough, not patchwork of casework stitched together and labelled as a capital programme. Renewal requires investment that reduces demand and strengthens services. None of those are present here. Residents deserve honesty, they deserve competence, they deserve a council that budgets strategically, not one that treats the capital programme as a wish list. But Mr. Mayor, Therefore, we will be, and I myself will be voting against this. Thank you.
Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The preamble at the beginning, or ramble at the beginning of this amendment, seeks to slate the Labour government, but seems to have overlooked the fact that not only has Dudley received more money by various grants and funding streams this year, but also certainty over the next 3 years of the medium-term financial plan. Funding certainty unlocks a lot of doors and allows better and more stable future planning. In terms of the capital projects and their distribution, which the Lib Dems suggest are practical and borough-wide, I wonder if this is more a map of Liberal Democrat target seats than anything more constructive. It certainly isn't an amendment to benefit the borough as a whole, with 10 out of 19 projects in the one and only seat that Lib Dems actually occupy as a result of an election. There are specific references to issues in my own ward, Quarry Bank and Dudley Wood, and two in particular that I must pick up on. Spring Meadow Park is an ongoing project which I have supported over a number of years, and I have to say I haven't seen any involvement from the Lib Dems to date, in public or officer meetings. The project does already sit on the Community Infrastructure Levy infrastructure funding list, awaiting funding of £115,000. Officers are working on possible external grant funding. I have worked for many years on issues in New Street, and Lib Dem colleagues should be perfectly well aware that there are specific funding criteria for traffic calming, and trying to give people in New Street false hope is wrong in my opinion. It's more to do with the stats than the cash. I think we would all wish to do all that we can for residents in our own wards, but we are here tonight to discuss the council tax setting for the whole borough. And this kind of methodology, if it were to catch on, would result in endless lists of local projects brought before this meeting, with the inevitability that funds would simply not be available to all. This is not the place to deal with the minutiae of day-to-day casework. The risk with this amendment is that it would leave many, even in the wards mentioned, wondering, what about our road, our wall, our fence, our park, etc. It's just not fair. This amendment shows a lack of understanding of council decision-making and how capital projects are prioritised, brought forward and funded. I am more than happy to work with my former Labour colleague to support all in our ward, but it is important to work within the council process to ensure a fair outcome for all across the wards and the entire borough. We cannot have ward-level capital projects decided by who gets an amendment in first, or which wards are being targeted by minor parties. There are processes in place and they must be followed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hamlet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wrote a speech, but I'm not actually going to say that speech now. Basically, I was elected as a councillor to try and do things for my ward. And I believe, having spoken to residents within my ward and having spoken to fellow councillors in my ward, there were a number of issues that are going back a number of years that hadn't been addressed. One of those being Spring Meadow Play Park, one of those being speeding issues down New Street. Now, these issues have been going on for a number of years and nothing has been done. So I've used my skills to try and highlight these issues to the council, and I felt the best way to do that was through an amendment. And this amendment sets out the issues that happen in my ward, and hopefully, if this amendment passes, we can see some improvements made in my ward for issues that are going back, some of these are going back 10 years. And I will stand here now and I'll back this amendment because I want to see improvements made in Quarry Bank and Dudley Wood, and hopefully this amendment is the start of seeing improvements in my ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hamid.
Thank you. I'll be quite brief. Now, before I came into the meeting today, my understanding was this is a budget meeting for the whole of the borough, not for one or two individual wards. And now we've put a lot of emphasis on the Section 151 officer today, and obviously his guidance. So now I wonder what he'd have to say if next year we had 24 budget proposals coming forward, because I'll tell you now, if this goes through, then me and my ward colleagues will certainly be putting forward our own budget amendment, and I'm sure everybody else will as well. So I wonder what people have to say about that. And also, you know, we've taken the good stuff out of your amendment, and we've tried to incorporate it into ours. And I'm going to do something else now and take something else that you've done in the past, and actually Councillor Harley has done as well. And what I'd say is this is aimed at everybody else. Now, if you choose to support this, and you choose to support the Lib Dem wards over your own tonight, then what will happen, and I quote Councillor Priest, as he said a few years ago, you will all at the next elections drop one by one by one. And that gesture was from you, Councillor Harley. So again, I'm not normally quite as direct as this, but I think it's quite ridiculous, if I'm honest. We can't have this going through at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kesey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Nice to see reform living rent-free in Councillor Priest's head. Keep it going. The Reform Group wants to begin by addressing the opening narrative within the Liberal Democrat amendment. The Reform Group agrees with the broad sentiment that the Labour government does not yet appear to have delivered the positive transformation in local government finance that many councils were promised. Across the sector, authorities remain under severe pressure, and the anticipated reset of the funding model has not yet materialised in a meaningful way. I think that's a fair criticism. However, what the Reform Group believes is missing from this amendment is honesty about how we reached this position. I've already mentioned 14 years of austerity, but perhaps the Liberal Democrats have chosen not to emphasise the reality, because between 2010 and 2015 they were part of the coalition that introduced and supported that programme of austerity. And for the sake of transparency and perhaps a little self-awareness, I should acknowledge that I served as a Conservative councillor between 2018 and 2023, but we all learn and we all evolved. But if we're to move forward honestly, we must acknowledge the decisions that brought us here. Turning to the detailed proposals within the amendment, the Reform Group must also raise a fundamental concern about process. We do not believe that the annual budget setting exercise is the appropriate mechanism for including highly specific individual projects and location-based schemes. If every one of the 72 councillors in this chamber were to submit their own list of specific works or local priorities into the budget itself, the process would quickly become unmanageable and unfocused. Now, if the Conservatives vote for it, I can guarantee you that leaflets in 22 wards by this time next week will be going out. Strategic budgets should set direction and priorities for the borough as a whole. Detailed project lists are better progress through normal policy, scrutiny and executive decision-making channels. It's also worth noting that the Liberal Democrats are not operating solely from opposition. They are part of the coalition administration currently running Dudley Council. Many of the proposals listed could have been pursued through the last 12 months via the mechanisms already available to the administration. That said, the Reform Group does want to recognise areas where it agrees with elements of this amendment. We support the proposal to increase community forum grants to £7,500 per ward. However, colleagues should be reminded that these grants previously stood at £10,000 per ward before being suspended. So this represents only a partial restoration rather than a new expansion. We also welcome the proposal for a community events and decorations grant and agree with the principle that ward-based grants should increase annually in line with inflation to protect their real value over time. On the proposal for a 100% council tax discount for residents who are terminally ill, we believe this is an issue that requires careful and sensitive consideration outside the pressure of a budget-setting meeting. Such a policy deserves full consultation, legal examination and cross-party discussion to ensure it is implemented responsibly and fairly. Similarly, while we absolutely recognise the importance of supporting our armed forces veterans, I'm not convinced that a blanket 25% council tax discount is the most effective use of limited resources. It may be more appropriate to focus support on those veterans experiencing genuine financial hardship or vulnerability rather than applying a universal reduction regardless of need. In conclusion, while we recognise some positive intentions within this amendment, we believe it highlights the wider reality that the financial pressures facing Dudley Council are rooted in long-term underfunding caused by years of austerity. We must address those structural issues honestly while ensuring our budget process remains strategic, responsible and focused on borough-wide priorities. The Reform Group notes the advice from the Section 151 officer and is contemplating whether to take that advice or follow the example of the Mayor at the last full meeting. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Corn.
Right, thank you, Mr Mayor. There is much in this Liberal Democrat amendment tonight which will improve lives of Cradley and Woolwich across Dudley Borough, but I want to focus on our proposals to give people battling with terminal illness more dignity. When someone is receiving end-of-life care, they are facing the most profound, difficult chapter of their life. They are not thinking about bills, final reminders dropping through the letterbox. They are thinking about time. Spending precious time with people they love most. Some workplaces are compassionate, some employers go above and beyond. Continuing to pay full wages while employees face terminal diagnosis. That generosity is admirable, but not everyone has that support. And even when income continues, the emotional and physical burden remains overwhelming. This is why the Liberal Democrats calling for council tax to be exempt for people receiving end-of-life care. Council tax is a necessary contribution to local services. We understand that, but when a person is near end of their life, the focus should not be on direct debits, arrears, letters demanding payment. The last thing anyone in that position should worry about is bills dropping on the doormat. Exempting people on end-of-life care from council tax would be a statement of values. It would say that as society, we recognise when humanity must come before revenue. The time someone has left should be spent making memories with their families. I hope we can all support this proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Patrick Hawley.
Raised with on some of the other contributions. First of all, I think the opposition are completely missing the point. We are here to set the council tax budget for the whole borough. We are. By supporting this amendment, that's precisely the action we take. That is the game we are in when you have no overall control. So you have to do things that normally wouldn't do. We didn't want a parish-type council last year, but it was a requirement of the Lib Dems to support that budget so this authority can continue to be run as efficiently as possible. You had the opportunity to do that, but as on the HRA budget, you were going to vote against it. No doubt you would vote against this budget tonight, regardless of whether we accepted your amendments. And had we accepted it, my guess is, would you just sat on your hands and abstained? So we are here to set the council tax budget, and in a position of no overall control. This is the nature of our business, where one party cannot just steamroll through and bring in whatever policies they wish to do. We have to sit down with other political groups and find a way forward. That's what we've done. But that offer was open to the Black Country Party, to Reform, to Lib Dems and to the Labour group. You didn't take it. So in essence, your ask was a reduction of £12.50 on somebody's replacement bin. That's not showing ambition at all, is it? And then Councillor Ali quotes that SIPFA wouldn't agree to this. Well, SIPFA, the 151, and probably the external auditors, simply wouldn't have agreed with your amendment because it wasn't supported. The difference between having proposals for all 24 wards is just a nonsense. It's just a nonsense. No overall control is a numbers game, and it means getting that vote through on that budget at the end of the night. This process does that. And I'll be completely honest, yes, there will be members that are uncomfortable at having to give away so much, but it sets the budget at the end of this evening. Just to quote Councillor Keasy's quotes, he talks about leaflets being delivered in 24 wards. Well, that's not going to happen, is it? Because before money delivers leaflets with Nigel's picture on all of them. So put that one to bed. However, I agree with Councillor Keasy's comments about having a thorough consultation process into the two elements of the Lib Dem amendment on those who are facing end of life and also on how we improve our offer to armed forces personnel. And I think that's why it's in the amendment, but it won't be acted upon until we start to scrutinise and debate and look into next year's budget. So I think that's a sensible option. What else was there? Yep, I think that's about it, Mr. Mayor. Okay, thank you.
Charlie. Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week, I spoke to ward residents, Keith, Dave, Nigel, Barbara and Graham, and they all wanted to talk to me and discuss potholes, the size, the locations and the shocking, shoddy repairs. But our residents don't live in silos. With every one of them, we also discussed Market Street, High Street, Stourbridge, Red Hill, Drew Road, Swinford Road, and the disgrace of Racecourse Lane. You see, they don't just care about their own streets, and a pothole in Norton or Pedmore, or even King Swinford, is just as important because they hit them on the school run, on the way to work, and when they're visiting family. They know you've had government funding and more announced from the combined authority. They know you've had an amber rating for road maintenance and are one of only 18 out of 154 to get a red rating for best practice. Right? I look at this amendment and I see that it doesn't aim to adjust or address all Dudley's residents' needs. It's just a piece of casework. Thank you.
Councillor Tromans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for allowing me to take my seat somewhat fashionably late this evening. I wasn't intending to speak tonight. I wasn't intending to be here at all, but the motorway was a kind mistress this evening. Before I move on to speaking about our amendment, I'd like to say a few words about the Labour amendment. And it's this: it's just not credible. Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll save that. I'll save that for social media. Okay. Well, here's okay. Thank you very much. But I've got a young child. So whoever said that, pipe down. All right. Yeah, good stuff. Okay then. So what this amendment shows is what the residents of Cradley and Quarry Bank, and indeed Wollaston, the comments made by Labour tonight, what it shows is that our residents, it confirms what we already know to be true, and that is they cannot rely on Labour to stand up for them. And here's the truth, guys, and have a good look at yourselves, because ultimately you could have taken control of this authority in May 24, but you shrank from the task. That isn't leadership, that is cowardice. So, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ali. You've had your 15 minutes. I know you wanted longer, but that's quite enough. All right, thank you very much. So, moving on to our amendment.
Can I just interrupt there? Sorry to do this. Can we just keep it down? All right, thank you.
Contain yourself. Thank you very much. It's a bit of decorum. Okay, so this amendment brings forward many benefits for the residents of our borough. It respects our armed forces veterans. and it offers support, one less thing for people to worry about who are facing the end. In my ward, there are several areas that have been neglected for decades. I think specifically of the slabs on Wollaston Farm Estate, for the reference of my 2 ward colleagues who may not know where that is. And, of course, the disgraceful state of Wollaston High Street. Just down from the Screaming Beans Cafe, a great cafe if you ever happen to be in the area, you can see where the road fragments are breaking up. Bits of that road are actually flying into pedestrians as they're walking down the street. So, if you're waiting for an apology from me or my colleagues for standing up to your residents, you'll be waiting longer than it will take for the time for the tram to get to Brierley Hill. I make absolutely no apology whatsoever for standing up for my residents. And for the reference, once again, from my ward colleague, particularly the one who has an attendance rate of less than 50% in this chamber, that is what representation looks like. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Trowmans. Councillor Peatlow.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I mean, we're quickly descending down into that avenue of farce, aren't we? Meeting by meeting by meeting. And I'll go through this amendment. And we will be supporting the amendment because why not? I mean, that's the position we've finally ended up at, isn't it? I mean, it's bloody ridiculous, Mr. Mayor, but we'll be supporting it. Now, firstly, I want to talk about the Section 151 officer. Now, I understand that the Mayor in his expertise was able to go one way at the last meeting, but I note the comments with regard to this motion. Now, I have some reservations, significant reservations, because what the amendment actually demonstrates is this chamber on budget night can supersede the expertise of officers. Because when I send an email with regard to the pothole in my ward, and I'm sure the cabinet member responsible would support that, I will get a relatively generic reply. Is that this pothole will now be part of that list, and we will get round to it once we've gone out and assessed it. Now, from tonight, and well done, Section 151 officer, because this will set the precedent, what this council chamber is going to do is say this night can actually supersede the expertise of those officers. And if we wish to come with a big pothole, or a small pothole, but my majority is only 5, and therefore it's really important that I get those votes forward. I know what I'll do. I'll take that to a budget setting meeting, and we'll actually sit down and discuss that and win that. Now, I think that's something really that the officers of this authority should reflect upon, because it makes a farce, Mr. Mayor, of democracy. Now, within this amendment, there's a number of significantly, and actually I'd go as far to say, excellent points within that. The uplift of the community grant, 7,500, the additional 2,500, fantastic, the events, and all of those areas down here. Now, I started off with this farcical contribution by saying, actually, we will be supporting it, because why the hell not? That's where democracy has got to in Dudley. But what I will be testing is when the leaflets go out, whether that be by Reform, whether that be by the Black Country or the Liberal Democrats, or indeed the Conservative Party, is next to the bar chart, we actually insert the wording with thanks to the Black Country Party for ensuring that the pothole, thanks from the Black Country Party for supporting by working in partnership to ensure on every single one of those points identified. Now, if this is the best, well, I'll propose it as it. Look, it's so ridiculous. I can put it forward as an amendment if you think I mean, but no, exactly. We've all been here long enough. I'm sure many of us have got homes to go to and leaflets to write and AI to consult. I'm amazed that the negotiating skills of the ruling group is that strong that you couldn't have got rid of those farcical elements and actually left us with what I'm sure every one of us in this council chamber would say were really positive, really good amendments, but let's get rid of the individual casework that the councillors have been unable to complete themselves. It makes a farce of democracy, something, with respect, Mr 151 officer, I think you should reflect upon, because rest assured, next year, oh, sorry, that's where we're at, isn't it? There'll be 57 amendments. I like 57. There's a lot of varieties in that, which will come forward to this budget setting meeting, talking from potholes to chip shops to whatever the fancy with the electric demands in Lyons Staybridge North. Good night to democracy.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe, for that enlightening speech. It was quite amusing. Thank you very much. Steve Edwards?
Is there a second?
This one.
He's asked to put the vote.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fine.
Seconder?
Yes.
Is there a seconder?
Yes, seconder.
Seconded, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
We now have to put that to the vote.
Okay. Okay, we now... Yeah.
Just a point of clarification within the debate. So, from the statutory officer perspective, I'm the monitoring officer, and I have my fellow statutory officer, Lisa Kitto, as a Section 151 officer.
Mr Mayor, with respect, I do apologise. I think it's the roles at the top table.
Just a point for clarification for members. Now we'll put to the vote to move for the vote for the amendment.
That's good. No.
They vote for it.
Oh, okay.
That is passed. That's passed.
That is passed. Thank you.
So we'll now vote on the amendment. No, we haven't voted on the amendment.
No, not
We
yet.
just voted on the vote.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now
Okay, just to make clear that was a vote on the vote. We're now,
Councillor Clark's right.
yeah, we're now voting on the amendment.
Councillor Clark's.
Oh, sorry.
I call on.
I call on Councillor Steve Clark to exercise his right to reply to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's very interesting to see that when Labour are failing, that the Lib Dems and Conservatives have to work together to make sure that we get out of the hole. And also, it's very interesting to listen to Councillor Kesey talking about austerity, because the reason we had austerity was because they spent all the money. That's why we had the austerity for 10 years. So well done, Sean. And, you know, this is why we know what we're doing on this side. So thank you, Mr Mayor. We will be supporting the amendment. Thank you very much.
I will now put the amendment to the vote. For clarity, members are voting on the amendment moved by Councillor Ryan Priest.
That's passed.
That's carried. I now call on Councillor Sean Kesey to speak on the motion on behalf of the Reform UK Group.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll try and whiz through this. Before I turn to the technical detail of the budget, I need to speak plainly. In my 56 years, I have never seen Dudley Borough in a more tired, unkempt or worn-down state. Across our towns and villages, in our parks, on our roads and in the everyday experience of residents, there is a visible sense of decline. It's something residents raise with me week after week. Budgets may be numbers on paper, but residents judge us by what they see around them. This Conservative administration will leave Dudley in a worse condition when it is inevitably removed from office than when it first took control. That is not a slogan, it is the lived experience of our communities, and it is the context in which this budget must be judged. The Reform Group has carefully reviewed the full budget proposals, including the medium-term financial strategy, savings programme, capital programme, financial assumptions, and the advice of the Section 151 officer. It is clear that this is not a budget driven by ambition, it is a budget driven by necessity. Its focus is on financial stability, protecting reserves, managing risk and ensuring that a legally balanced position can be achieved. That reflects the reality facing local government after 14 years of austerity, which hollowed out finances. But local decisions matter as well as national ones. The financial position we're debating tonight is also the result of choices made here in Dudley under Conservative leadership. We cannot separate national policy from local responsibility. Looking at the detail of the medium-term financial strategy, it is clear how narrow the margins remain. The reliance on transformation savings, continued efficiency assumptions and future gap projections shows a council managing pressures rather than confidently shaping the future. This is fundamentally a budget of constraint. Residents will see council tax rising, service pressures continuing and limited visible improvements in everyday services. That is why many will question whether this represents progress or simply maintenance of the status quo. The Section 151 officer's advice rightly stresses the importance of maintaining financial resilience and avoiding decisions that weaken reserves or expose the council to greater risk. That is something this chamber must take seriously. We understand that alongside this budget, the administration is proposing the reintroduction of free parking. While we welcome any measure that genuinely supports our town centres and local businesses, we must be absolutely clear about the history here. Removing free parking was one of the most damaging and anti-business decisions this council made. It reduced footfall, damaged confidence and cost some traders their livelihoods. So yes, we welcome its return because it should never have been scrapped in the first place. But this is the correction of a mistake, not something to boast about. When a harmful policy is reversed, it should be recognised as learning from failure, not presented as a success. Similarly, we understand that pop-up tip facilities may be reintroduced. Improving convenient waste disposal can help residents and reduce fly tipping, and that is something we support in principle. However, last year I dealt with numerous distressed residents after a pop-up tip was placed directly behind homes on the Northway estate in Sedgley. While the intention may have been positive, the impact on residents' quality of life was significant. If such facilities return, they must be properly planned and located. Convenience must not come at the expense of residential communities. Ultimately, this council must set a legal budget. We recognise the work undertaken by officers and the necessity of financial stability, but we cannot fully endorse a budget that reflects years of constrained ambition and leaves Dudley visibly declining. At the same time, we will not support unrealistic alternatives that increase financial risk without sustainable funding. For that reason, the Reform Group will abstain. We do so because we recognise financial reality and the legal necessity of setting a budget, but we cannot give political endorsement to the direction that has brought us here. Residents don't just want promises, they want honesty, realism and delivery. And just to finish on a political note, and you'll all groan, but I'm saying it because I believe it, that's what reform stands for. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I now call on any speakers the substantive motion. And so we have Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be quick because I know that everybody's hungry in this chamber. Adult social care is one of the most challenging and vital services across the country. It is imperative in Dudley that we get it right to support adults with disabilities, mental health needs, long-term conditions and increasing frailty through home and residential care. Reablement is key. Safe discharge is a necessity. Essential adaptations can help keep a loved one independent for longer, and safeguarding is a must to protect all. Mr Mayor, over the past year, whilst evidencing that measure to manage spend has been sustainable, our services have delivered exceptional results. 99% satisfaction, support for more than 4,700 residents and vital help for over 2,900 carers. Performance has improved with significant reduction in occupational therapy waiting times and a rapidly reducing waiting list for deprivation of liberty assessments. Just in the last 3 months, this has gone down by a third. This has brought the overall waiting list down to levels not seen since 2022. Mr Mayor, these are not just numbers. Behind every number is a person whose dignity, independence and well-being we help protect every day. Tonight's budget strengthens that progress. We are continuing to increase investment in adult social care by boosting our voluntary and community partners, expanding reablement, improving hospital discharge, preventing avoidable admissions and increasing funding. And it doesn't end there, Mr Mayor. We have begun a full redesign of adult social care, co-designed with staff, communities, service users and carers to ensure we have a modern, resilient and future-ready service. This budget reaffirms our commitment, protecting the most vulnerable, supporting those who care for them and investing in a service that public can trust. Moving on to public health. Improving the health of all our residents is extremely important. By empowering our residents to be healthy, we reduce avoidable admissions and support growth in production workforce. Our health visitors made 2,999 new birth visits within 14 days, and another 3,000 babies received a visit at 6 to 8 weeks. The oral health care of our 5-year-olds is better than the national and regional figures, and we distributed a staggering 60,000 toothbrushes. We beat the national average for vaccinations. Our mobile breast screening is going from strength to strength. We're supporting work to improve bone health, and we're featured on the BBC for tackling gang crime. The journey, Mr Mayor, is always ongoing, and as we focus on reducing risk factors for cardiovascular disease, we look at smoking, healthy eating, physical activity and obesity. And this is why we are investing more money into our 3 leisure services where people can be supported within the community setting. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Goddard. Councillor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, it's been an exciting and pivotal year for the neighbourhood services portfolio. Our teams are at the forefront of service delivery to our residents and totally committed to the borough. I'm going to highlight the key deliverables of the last year and our plans going forward within the 2 main pillars of the portfolio, based on the budget proposals councillors have in front of them tonight. Firstly, waste and street scene, and then culture and communities. We have taken a proactive approach to delivering the government's simpler recycling legislation, investing in 56 new vehicles, over 400,000 new containers and over 100,000 rolls of liners, whilst conducting a comprehensive communications campaign. The new service will be in place on time from the 6th of April this year. Of course, as part of delivering this new service, our household waste and recycling provision plays a key role. Should the proposed budget be adopted by the council tonight, we will be aiming to increase that provision for our residents, particularly for those in the north of the borough. We will be looking to invest in a programme of pop-up recycling centres in the north of Dudley after the successful trials over just over a year ago at our Northway site in Sedgley and our Lister Road depot here in Dudley. We intend to increase this service from the 1st and 3rd Saturday in the month to a more regular provision. This will include consideration of other locations alongside the Northway and Lister Road sites. Dates and times for each of these locations will be made available, as well as the booking slots once finalised. We will also be discussing with our contractor opening our main Stourbridge Road site 7 days a week. Our street scene team has transformed the service to significant effect and receives considerable written praise for the work they do from residents and councillors. During the summer, the number of inquiries related to the service reduced by over 1,000. In the coming year, we'll be investing in new street sweeping vehicles fitted with weed ripper attachments and new mowing equipment to replace our ageing fleet. We will also be looking to implement a larger target area-based deep clean programme for our worst hit litter areas to achieve an improved local environment for our residents, and will continue to provide an effective rapid response service for the fly tip removal on public land, whilst tackling significant repeat issues with enforcement. Our arbitral team manages the borough's 150,000 tree stock. The team are out during the storms and severe weather when fallen and dangerous trees cause health and safety related incidents. During the recent heavy snowfall, they attended and resolved over 200 reports of fallen and dangerous trees that were affecting our residents and visitors. Additionally, we have introduced a proactive tree inspection programme to identify dead, dangerous and dying trees and conduct any necessary work before the trees become unsafe. On to our events, Mr Mayor. Civic events and community incentives have been phenomenally successful, driven by a focus on local pride and cultural engagement, demonstrating a strong, ongoing commitment to enhancing local communities through collaborative and inclusive events. Highlights from last year include a sold-out fireworks event at Himley Hall with over 22,000 people in attendance, generating over £30,000 surplus to reinvest in our services. 50,000 people braved the weather and attended various Christmas light events across the borough. 16,000 people attended Armed Forces Day at Himley Hall, and over 4,000 people took the opportunity on Remembrance Sunday to remember the sacrifice made by those that have defended our freedom. In total, Mr Mayor, over 107,000 people have attended our civic, community and commercial events in the last year. To build on those successes, we'll be investing a further £100,000 in our events programme for the coming year to upgrade civic and key community events, emphasising those events most important to local people. Some of those highlights, Mr Mayor, for this year will be the Legends by the Lake on the 17th of June. This is a brand new family-friendly event at Himley Hall that brings iconic tribute acts to a stunning lakeside setting. It combines nostalgia and entertainment with a safe, welcoming and affordable atmosphere for all ages. This event will generate income through ticket sales, concessions and sponsorship. On Forces Day this year, including the freedom of the borough.
Mr Mayor, what has this got to do with the future? We're getting a report on the past. Mr Mayor, you should be keeping on the subject. We should be discussing the budget for the future, not looking at the past. Would I ask you to remind members of that?
Councillor Simon Phipps.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Tonight, I'm not going to win any awards for drama in my speech because I'm simply just going to read out some facts and figures about what the administration is delivering in this budget. First of all, nearly £1.5 million is being invested to bring back subsidised car parking charges across the borough, meaning that nobody will pay for the first 2 hours of parking on Dudley Council-owned car parks. Like many people on this side of the chamber, it pained us to take that offer away. We knew that what we were doing was using council taxpayers' money to subsidise that car parking in return to try and support town centres. It was taken away during a period of extreme pressure on the council, and at the first opportunity, it has been restored. And I will take no lessons or lectures from the parties opposite that would have either taken that away earlier or would have reduced the offer when they had the chance, when they were in control. £150,000 is being spent around local schools to make roads more safer, continuing on the Safer Routes to School scheme that we have been delivering over the last few years, and is something that the Conservative Party has consistently funded during budgets. We are making provision for a full review of car parking across the whole borough. That's not just about car parking in town centres, but that's also car parking on local roads where the restrictions are, and considering whether we can provide further offers to residents, such as things like residents' parking permit schemes, where people want and agree to have them. We've already delivered increases investment in road maintenance of 17% year on year, up to over £24 million. Now, the recent weather has been absolutely horrendous, and every single council, led by every single political party, is having the same debate in their chambers about potholes. Now, our local teams, the people that are employed by this council, not contractors, carry out about 3,000 safety inspections on our road in the last year. And that is staff that we already have. If you believe the Labour amendment, you'd think that we weren't doing that. Over 3,000 safety inspections have already been carried out this year, and over 2,000 square metres of potholes have been repaired by those same people employed by the council. And as a result of the contracts that we have negotiated over the last few years, we have been changing the way we do road resurfacing, so there's more long-term, fully road resurfacing, as well as structural patching. And that's something that, if that goes wrong, the contractors pay, not the taxpayer, because we negotiated the additional term in the guarantee that's provided to them. In response to measures that were raised about grip bins earlier on, at no point during the recent Storm Goretti were any of our gritting routes left without salt being laid on them, and every single grip bin that has been reported to the council that needs refilling has been refilled, with the exception of 4 that were reported last week and will be filled this week. If you have more bins that have not been refilled, please report them on My Dudley Councillor or send them to me, and I will trace it up and find out what's happening with them. Moving on from infrastructure, regeneration investment is huge. Hundreds of millions of pounds has been invested in the borough and has been secured to be invested over the next few years and will be delivered by this budget. £10 million in Brierley Hill to prepare for the Metro, and a further £3.25 million to invest in historic buildings. We've delivered £26 million on Castle Hill for the new University Centre. £4.5 million in Dudley and £3 million in Stourbridge for investment in roads and transport systems. We're preparing for the £20 million awarded not just to Hales Owen but also to Brierley Hill, £40 million overall, awarded by the previous Conservative government under the Levelling Up Fund, and we're preparing to deliver that now. We've secured £20 million of investment over the next 10 years in heritage assets across the borough, and a further £16 million of transport investment in Lye. All of those things are being delivered in the budget that we are discussing this evening. And I understand that's not perfect. No, it's never going to be perfect. But we are making huge strides at fixing our infrastructure and regenerating our towns. And it's only been a Conservative administration that's ever been able to deliver on that scale.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I first start by mentioning, to hear the Leader of Reform speak so freely and firmly on what reform means, across the country, it looks like reform means barefaced lies. Okay? However, the budget, mine is less, excuse me, you've had your time to speak now, be quiet, you told me last week. Sorry. However, the budget, mine is less a question and more a statement. Can I first thank the Leader and the Capital Allocations Board for the money given to Fenspool Community Centre within this budget. This will restore the centre back to where it was previously, possibly even better. Following a horrendous arson attack that they suffered at the back end of last year, special mention should be given to the Cabinet for returning the Council to a good financial state when, like so many other authorities, we were on the edge of financial hardship. I know that without this upturn in finances, the funding that has been put forward from the Capital Allocations Fund to one of Dudley's best-run community centres wouldn't have been possible. Many thanks from myself and my ward colleagues.
Councillor Ryan Priest.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to speak on some of the specific items that are now in the budget as a as a whole. Because I've sat here and listened, and I think some criticism absolutely fair, but I'm mesmerised by the fact that the criticism is not that the Liberal Democrats perhaps could be accused of not looking at the budget as a whole, but that we're looking at our wards. I mean, that is exactly what we're all elected here to do. And you know, any one of the councillors in this chamber could have put forward amendments that delivered investment in our wards, as our residents would expect us to do. But if your harshest criticism is that the Liberal Democrats are delivering for the communities they represent, well, that's criticism that I can take. And on a few the specific points about external bodies such as SITFA not supporting this amendment, well, I'll take them for a drive down Furlong Lane, and we'll see how opposed they are to fragmented casework-specific amendments. I'm sure, and we talk about improvements in Quarry Bank and Dudley Wood, the ward which I now live in, that half my family were from, and I look at Spring Meadow Park, and I don't see how residents will look at the chains rusting on the swings and see how Labour involvement for the last 10 years talking about the problem is well deserved for praise. What we've got here is a budget amendment that's finally going to deliver on for those residents, and I make no apologies for that. But I think we've learned something quite revealing about politics in the chamber tonight. That when it came to a council tax discount for veterans, neither Reform nor Labour could back it, because it dared invest in wards that the Liberal Democrats hold. Now, for Labour, that's quite disappointing, but for Reform UK, it's extraordinary. The party that wraps itself in flags at every opportunity and talks endlessly about patriotism, yet when real measures came to support veterans, they couldn't bring themselves to vote for it. And I think that says a great deal. Tin pot patriots that perform for the cameras. And the same things happened when standing up for residents dealing with fly tipping in my ward in Foxcote, on Foxcote Lane, where people in Cradley and Woodescote have had to put up with that problem for years. You're right, it shouldn't take being brought to this chamber, but different parties, all parties, Conservative, Labour and Liberal Democrats have represented Cradley and Woodescote while that's been a problem. Not one of us has been able to solve it by reporting it to whichever casework system we had at the time. If we're driven to do it in the chamber, then so be it. Again, I make no apologies for that. And yet again, neither Reform nor Labour willing to support it. They are the fly tippers' friend. So residents will draw their own conclusions when it comes to tackling fly tipping, which parties chose to sit on their hands. And I think it's striking that we've got councillors in this chamber who represent the very communities that these improvements were designed to help and choose not to support them when given the chance. Our amendment delivered practical improvements, yes, in the wards that the Liberal Democrats represent, something, again, any member could have gone to their group leader to propose. It delivers safer streets and better parks and action on long-standing problems, and with the budget now amended, the Liberal Democrat group are satisfied that it delivers more for our communities. It's stronger than the document that was first brought to this chamber, and residents will be able to see the difference. Opportunities to invest in our neighbourhoods have appeared because of that increase in funding that was not inspected, and the Liberal Democrats have made sure that those opportunities were taken, and so for that reason, Mr Mayor, the Liberal Democrat group will support the budget tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Priest. Adam Aston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will be brief. Martin's got a home to go to. For almost a decade locally, residents have been promised better services and stronger finances. Yet, year after year, we see the same old story. Slippage in the capital programme, trips to the south of France, delayed projects, £150,000 picnic tables just for pigeons. We won't mention Brooks Bar, and a growing lack of public confidence in this council. 10 years on, where's the grip and where's the long-term plan? And nationally, 14 years of Conservative government left councils like ours on their knees. From 2010, with the support of the Lib Dems, local authorities faced billions in cuts. Core government funding was slashed, which meant selling assets, cutting services and increasing fees just to stand still. So they're asking for a 4.99% rise in council tax. So what will we get in return? Will residents see a 4.99% improvement in their services? Are potholes going to be fixed 4.99% faster? Are housing repairs completed 4.99% more efficiently? Will streets be 4.99% cleaner? Let's be honest, the answer is probably no. Our amendment offered something back, but that was roundly rejected. Finally, we have a Labour government which understands the need for stability and financial planning, and which provided a 3-year settlement, as well as the additional millions to Dudley being provided in the form of the recovery grant uplift. It has increased Dudley's core spending power like the last government never did, and I'd like to pay tribute to our local MPs for their lobbying and work on this. Mr Mayor, there are measures in the budget which we can, of course, fully support. Who wouldn't welcome the reintroduction of 2 hours of free parking, the investment in foster care recruitment, additional household waste provision, amongst others? But it simply doesn't go far enough. It doesn't give back to the taxpayers enough. Residents deserve value for money. They deserve a council that grips projects and delivers on time and puts their interests first. Mr Mayor, we need reform, just not that, with the greatest respect. Martin, I didn't say that. We need grown-up conversations. We need discipline. We need grown-up conversations as part of the budget setting process, not just half an hour on Teams where you offer to reduce the price of a bin. Yes, Councillor Harley, had the budget been amended with our amendment in full, we would have supported the budget in its entirety. Because it wasn't, then we can't. On that note, Mr Mayor, can I move the question now be put?
Formally seconded, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Clerk to reply to the debate on the original or substantive motion.
Oh, sorry, we've got to vote.
Oh, sorry. Okay, right.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, just point of clarification. So we will now again vote to go to the vote, and if we can put that to members.
And then I'll call on Steve Clark.
That's passed. So that is passed.
That has passed. So now, right, okay. I call on Councillor Steve Clark. Thanks for warming you up, Steve, to reply to the debate on the original or substantive motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And just incidentally, Councillor Aston, the recovery grant is the same as the COVID grant, which is the previous government brought in. What's happened is that your government is just extending it. So it's not new. So anyway, so tonight my message is simple. Reform is not a slogan here. It's a track record. We've shown that you can be bold, responsible and focused on the residents, all at the same time. And the question now isn't whether change is possible, but who has the experience to deliver it. Protecting and rebuilding reserves is not a choice, it is a duty. And tonight, members must decide whether they're prepared to discharge that duty or gamble with the future of this council. While Labour's national government has chosen to withdraw support from the most vulnerable in many areas, this administration is stepping up locally. We are investing more, not less, and working closely with our voluntary sector and community partners to protect those who need help most. And members should reflect very carefully on that contrast before they vote. This budget also delivers practical, visible help for residents and local businesses, including 2 hours of free parking, a clear commitment to supporting our town centres, and an additional £300,000 to help council taxpayers who are struggling. And these are not abstract figures. These are real benefits that residents will feel. Members opposite and at the back must be honest with themselves and with the public. A vote against this budget is a vote against those measures. It is a vote against free parking, against support for struggling households, and against financial stability. There is no way to separate the two. We value our partners and we will continue to work with them, but partnerships must be sustainable, honest, and rooted in financial reality, not political wish lists. This budget is responsible, credible, and forward-thinking. It supports transformation, reduces long-term costs, and manages demand so that we avoid deep and damaging cuts that Labour's approach would make inevitable in future years. It aligns spending with strategy and delivers the stability our residents expect and deserve. There are no serious or workable alternatives before the council tonight. So I urge all members, particularly those opposite, to think carefully about the message that their vote sends and the consequences it carries. Tonight's vote is simple. Support this budget and deliver protection for our most vulnerable. 2 hours of free parking, real help for residents, and financial stability. Or vote against it and explain to your communities why you chose politics over people. Let us move forward together for Dudley. Thank you.
In line with the Council's Procedure Rule 16.4, I will now put substantive motion to the recorded and named vote. That is carried. There is no more urgent business, so that concludes this meeting of the council. Can I just say that there is a box on the back there on the table that you can put whatever you like, reasonably, gifts or whatever, for the Mayor's charities. Thank you. And by the way, Hillary Bulls, no one